Hi there, my name is Shelby Bates. I am the Education and Outreach Program Coordinator for the Colorado Initiative for Inclusive Higher Education. I am doing something a little different with this webinar. I did not have it recording when the webinar had originally started, so the beginning of this has been recorded afterwards, and then around 10 or 15 minutes in, it will transition to what was the live webinar on autism and higher education supports. So it is my pleasure to introduce two of our panelists today. One is Dr. Shiva Santhanam, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Speech Language Hearing Sciences at Metropolitan State University of Denver. She leads the Integrated Supports for Students with Autism in College, or ISSAC program at the university. You will hear more about that today. Her research focuses on developing and implementing supports-based interventions for individuals on the autism spectrum and promoting health equity for children on the autism spectrum from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Our second panelist is Julia Kothi, who is the Associate Director of the Center for Community Partnerships at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. And Julia will be speaking about several different programs that Colorado State University has and how some of those may support students with autism. So I went over a few introductions with the panelists. The other thing I'll talk about briefly is just the flow for the presentation. I'm going to start by talking about disability services, then I'm going to turn it over to the two panelists to speak about these comprehensive support programs with which they work, and then I'll talk about inclusive higher education as another pathway to college for students with autism. One of the things that makes autism really unique, and a big reason why I decided to kind of put together this webinar, is that there are a lot of different academic levels students with autism could be at. In addition to this, students with autism have a really wide range of adaptive skills. I think with many disabilities, there is no one-size-fits-all, but with autism in particular, I get a lot of parents asking questions about what is the best fit for their student? What type of support do they need? And I think it's sometimes hard to know where might be best for a student when it comes to college. We're also seeing an increasing number of students with autism in college. A lot of students have now been included throughout K-12 education and are looking to also be included when it comes to college. So those are just some of the reasons. I frequently get asked about just questions from parents about students with autism, and that was a big motivator for putting on this webinar. So for any student with a disability, there are disability service offices. These are available at all schools, whether that is a two-year college, community college, a university, public school, private school, trade school, technical school, whatever it is when we're talking about that post-secondary education. It is again, required to be in all schools. That office primarily assists with academic accommodations. So these might be things like having extra time to complete assignments or on a test. It could be a quiet test location, preferred seating in class. Maybe you like to sit in the front, maybe you sit in the back, by the door, maybe you get to take frequent breaks. Assistive technology, so when we talk about like speech-to-text devices or having a screen reader on your computer or any sort of kind of technology that might be supporting you that you could access. The other thing to know with disability services is that students have to choose to access this office. So once a student has been accepted to the school, they would go to disability service to meet with someone to get these accommodations in place. I'll go over that process on the next slide. The reason I bring this up is because for some students, disability services might not be needed. There could be students with autism who say, I really don't need the accommodations. I'm not going to disclose my disability. I think in general, we really encourage students to access disability service because you never know what might be offered or what you might need, because especially if you're a freshman to college. But I do want to make the point that just because you have autism doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need these extra supports. But on the flip side, we're going to have students with autism who need more support than just the accommodations, and that's really what we're going to hit on in the rest of the presentation today. But I want you to know that this office exists, so if that is all you need, you know it's there. The other thing I want to point out for teachers or other professionals who might be working with families is many families don't know this office exists. So I'll just say, don't assume that everybody knows disability services exist at the college level. I have run into families who have said their child can't go to college because they don't know that there's actually a disability service office on campus, and that might be all their child needs. Some other names for this office might be Student Access Services, Student Support Services, Disability Support Office, Student Achievement Services. There's lots of different names. If you can't find it, I would reach out to the school and just ask what office is serving students with disabilities. So on this slide, I've just outlined the process so you have a sense of what it takes to get these accommodations in college. So the student applies traditionally, whatever that application looks like for the school. Then they're accepted. They go to disability services to disclose their disability. They provide some documentation of that disability. This is usually based on what sort of disability it is. So you might be asked for medical documents, mental health type of documentation, some sort of documentation about a physical disability, whatever it is. And disability services will make an eligibility ruling. I would say for the most part, if a student has been accessing an individualized education plan or an IEP, they will most likely be eligible for disability services. And then the person from disability service and the student will discuss possible accommodations that might work for them. The student then meets with the professor in the majority of cases to discuss those accommodations. Sometimes disability services will just email the professor on the student's behalf, but a lot of times it's still important for the student to advocate to make sure they receive those accommodations. So this is just a very brief overview. There are a lot of resources online. You can look into more about disability services. I think the key takeaway is if you're a student or you're working with a student with autism, even before you apply to a school, you are welcome to go talk to the disability service office and get a sense of who they are, what they offer, what supports might be best for you. So just know this is kind of one level of support. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Santhanam now to talk a little bit more about ISSAC at Metropolitan State University. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, this is the part where the webinar had been cut off. And so Shiva shared at this point some of her disclosures. So she works full-time at Metropolitan State University of Denver. She is the developer of ISSAC, their program, Integrated Supports for Students with Autism in College. She's also a licensed speech-language pathologist, and there is no financial relationship with this presentation. Some of the learning outcomes for her section of the presentation are to describe ISSAC and the services that are available at Metropolitan State University of Denver. I will note here, in addition to ISSAC, they do have, again, that Disability Service Office, and they also have another program called the Inclusive Higher Education Certificate Program that you are free to look into. This portion of the presentation will also include some strategies on preparing for higher education and how that's different than what you might encounter in the K-12 system. Okay, so you have the intro slide here. If you wish to send an email, you can see there the email address listed. And then this is the flyer for ISSAC. So on here, it talks about having weekly group sessions, bi-monthly individual sessions, ongoing peer support. Similar to many programs, this program also relies a lot on other students who are acting as kind of peer mentors, which I think you'll hear about in the slides to come. If you are interested in this program, there's a link, and then you'll also see there is on the slides the email address for the program itself. So I am going to go to the next slide, and this is actually where the presentation starts up again. So I'm going to pause this and then transition over to what was the live presentation.
So the focus again is on job preparation once they transition from college, and most of our students actually work while they're in college, and this is not just autistic students, but MSU Denver has a very non-traditional student population, so most of our students are working anyways, and we also focus on classroom engagement and navigation around the campus, especially around interaction with peers and professors. So like I mentioned, our approach is a support space approach, which means that we focus on student strengths and we focus on what's already available in terms of supports, and we try to work around with that, as opposed to having a more deficit-based model or skill-based, where we're saying, hey, you don't have this skill and let's work on your eye contact, or let's work on your having you point more, or let's work on your nonverbal communication. So instead of me telling them what to do, I work based off of what they already come with, and how can we adapt and modify that to provide them better support during their time on campus, during with classrooms and outside classrooms. And I, like I said, the peer engagement and the peer support that they get is just immensely helpful, because just having another student that goes through similar experiences in college, just like a student on the autism spectrum does, I think it's invaluable just knowing that someone shares these experiences, has the same kinds of challenges that they face. So my thought, or my take on all of this, is that some of the challenges that our students on the autism spectrum face is not just unique to them. They are challenges that every student on campus faces to some degree or the other. So having that kind of support system helps them feed off of each other and help support each other and grow from that, as opposed to me acting like a sage on the stage and telling them, here's how you need to behave. So that's how I like to approach the entire program. And here are some factors that I wanted to mention that go talk about the need for a program like this, and what we know from research as some of the factors that lead to optimal outcomes in college. I'll be really quick here. You'll have this slide with you. There are several intrinsic factors, such as student motivation and being able to be flexible and advocating for themselves. And there are also external factors outside of the students that are very crucial, are quite crucial in determining how successful the student is, and whether they graduate or complete their classes, and whether they find a job, and all of that. So I really believe in the power of that peer support, and we also have, which I can talk in detail at some other point, is a faculty support program that I facilitate for faculty members and staff on campus. And so we build awareness on understanding of autism and neurodiversity. And we also build education for faculty on how to support students who are neurodiverse within their classrooms, what are best teaching strategies and things like that. So those are, again, a very helpful component for student success. And understanding what autism is, understanding just neurodiversity overall, and being able to be aware of, how to communicate with them and how to support them better is, again, very, very helpful on college campuses. We can move to the next slide, please. So quickly, here is the landscape of higher education changing. Of course it is. And is it going to help impact my child or my student? And I think you all know the answer to that is yes, it is going to impact. I've heard from students with this changing COVID pandemic that some of them have hated online classes. They just cannot be there, and they don't like being in online classes. And some of my students on the autism spectrum just love being at home, that they don't have to put in all those resources to socialize and go through their daily activities and routines. For some of them, it's been wonderful. For some of them, it's been difficult, just like it is for all of us. So how can we be prepared and set some, realistic expectations, by planning ahead for what's coming in higher education, whether you are a student on the autism spectrum yourself that is watching, or if you're a parent are planning on, you're thinking about your child going to a college. I think the time to start thinking about this is about age 12 to 14. That's usually the best time to start thinking about transition and whether you want to consider college or not, no college, or things like that. And gather your support system, and whoever that may be. That might be your own family members, that might be your professionals that have been helping you throughout the time that you've had your child. And it might also be professors or advisors and counselors in colleges and universities. Um, anybody in your support system, start gathering that network. That's what's going to be really helpful. And we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and I'll leave this slide with you all. There are some options, and I'm guessing, Julia, you'll be talking about this as well. There are some things that we could do, and it's not specific to students on the autism spectrum, for anybody really. You have options such as 2-year college, 4-year college, and then graduate degrees following that, and then vocational school, certificate programs, and home-based business or self-employment are all options. So college is not the only option, although it would be wonderful for everybody to have higher education in their belt. And higher education definitely helps with finding more jobs, and gives more credibility, helps build self-esteem. You just become a more contributing member of the society. So higher education has its own benefits, but higher education may not be for all. So setting those realistic expectations are again very important. And some considerations that if your student or your child decides to go pursue higher education, thinking about whether you'd like in-person classes, online classes, and whether you like it or not, online classes are going to become more common and popular. So understanding what that entails, how can we train our students, and how can we help support our children through online classes is again very, very important consideration to make. Number of classes to take per semester, number of students in the classroom, what supports does the university provide? Are those specialized supports? Is it out of the disability service office? Is there a cost involved? All of those are considerations to make. And then beyond that is meeting with specific departments, meeting with specific guidance counselors in the universities. These are all steps that families can take when you are considering a college for your child. And do I have like a couple more minutes or?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Okay, thanks. So how do I prepare for this change is, if you have a 12-year-old or 14-year-old at home, the time is now to start working towards building self-advocacy for your child, and work with your speech language pathologist or other service providers, especially your special education teacher in school, and other special services that you get in school to help work on these goals. And if it's not part of the IEP that your child has, you can advocate for your child to have a goal of self-advocacy on their IEP. And then the importance of health, whether that's physical or mental health. Don't ignore the academic skills because grades matter. And again, providing ample opportunities for practicing these skills, engaging with peers, going outside and doing stuff. And building more the fifth point there, I just cannot emphasize that enough. The more you build awareness of autism and neurodiversity in your community, the better it is for you and your child or your student in the future, because it's just, we need to be doing that as advocates for our kids and our students. And the more understanding people have, educators, professors, co-workers, employers, they all begin to understand neurodiversity. They all begin to support students on the autism spectrum better when they have a better understanding. Most people want to support. It's just that they don't know how to support. And so we need to do that. That education piece is again with us. It's our responsibility to do that. And then, rewarding, obviously we reward our children for all their successes, whether big or small. Keep doing that. And we can move the next slide. Yeah, I think I mentioned this already. Building your child's peer network, building your support system, whether that includes parents that have older children or young adults or older adults on the autism spectrum. If you know somebody in your community who's been successful through college, you can even reach out to your own service providers to connect you to families that have gone through the are going through right now. And trust me, there have been several people that have graduated college that are successfully working in jobs. I have colleagues in my university that are professors that are on the autism spectrum. And so there is really no limitation because somebody is on the autism spectrum that they cannot complete college. Is it going to be challenging? Yes, it is, but it's challenging for everyone, right? So it's just helpful when you talk to those people and build your support network that way. And teaching your child to take responsibility and initiative, and that again goes along with that self-advocacy piece. And brainstorming activities with your child to figure out what to do during their leisure time, during their free time, is again so important, because we all struggle with not knowing what to do when we have some extra time, right? So yeah, so those are some things that I wanted to leave you with. And like I said, the more we work on setting our children up for success, or our students up for success, we work on, teaching them how to self-advocate for themselves, how to teach or how to show their peers and their community on how accepting and more supporting they can be. And we eventually build our students and our children's self-esteem. So I think that is something that I wanted to leave you with, and that is primarily the main idea of this program. And I'm open to any questions or comments. I should have left my email here for the recording, but I will do that after. Maybe I can pass it through Shelby, maybe.
That sounds fun.
So, yeah, so I'll leave that there. And then if you have questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so again, if you all have questions now, feel free to put them in the chat box, and then I'm going to turn it over to Julia, and then we'll have time at the end to answer some questions. All right.
Okay, you can hear me now? Thank you. I'm Julia Kothe, and I'm from the Center for Community Partnerships, which is located at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. And we're based out of the Department of Occupational Therapy. And we're kind of the service and outreach arm of the department. We've done a lot of work with community. Our organization actually started about in the mid-'80s. Working with people in the community members with intellectual disabilities, helping them get into integrated, competitive, supported employment. And that was our foundation. And then we built from there. We, at any one point in time, serve many different student populations with different disabilities. Autism is one that we have a special place in our heart for. And we've been working with students with autism a little over 10 years with a few of our programs. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of an overview of the different programs we have, and I certainly also could take specific questions. And I appreciate everything Shiva said. I agree with all your points, and you did a nice job of giving more detail. My slides aren't as detailed, but again, if there's questions, please feel free to ask. So the mission of our center is to support the inherent dignity, potential, and full participation of all people. we always, we take an empowerment model, and everything we do is holistic. We always look at the whole person, all the different areas of one's life. So looking at education and academics, employment, career, health, social, and purpose. Those are some of the major areas we focus on. And we definitely work with neurodiverse individuals. So next slide. So one of our programs, this is a bridge program. And this bridge program, I'll be talking about the program it's a bridge for in a moment. But so one of our programs works with students who are coming to Colorado State University. So students with autism coming to Colorado State University have the opportunity to do our bridge program, which is an early move-in program. And we designed it that way on purpose because we found that many students and families preferred, if possible, a little head start and a little opportunity to get on campus while it's still kind of quiet and relaxed and calm, because move-in time can be pretty crazy at a university like ours with so many students. And so students come a couple days early before the big move-in day, and they can move in early, but we also have kind of some support and orientation for both families and students. And we have students help us with a lot of the presenting. So students who have already been in our programs, so again, like what Shiva was saying, the importance of kind of the peer mentor role, and students who have been there, as guides to families and students is really powerful. And then we help them get situated in their residence hall, in the community, kind of building connections and support before classes start. Then next slide. So the bridge program is for our opportunities for post-secondary success program. And like Shiva, we also like acronyms. So we have a lot of crazy acronyms. We call it the OPS program, but that's what it stands for. And we provide a supported education model. We have been partnering with Front Range Community College in Fort Collins. And between our two sites, we have a supported ed model, which provides individualized supports to students, neurodiverse students. And the purpose of that is to have a place, kind of a place to turn to. And it sounds like Shiva's program is that sort of place as well. But a place where there's support, where they can come in. Many of our students, we meet with them a couple times a week. We have mentors, again, with this program. And we also have graduate OT students helping with our program. OT is a beautiful fit for things that we do. And we provide, looking again at the whole picture, college life in and out of the classroom. How is life going? Of course, we emphasize under academics, like all college students need, is a little more executive functioning skills, getting organized, staying on top of things, navigating the college landscape. We also sort of provide a kind of a case management model where we are totally connected to the other student services across campus. And as Shelby was saying earlier, like the disability service centers on campuses, there's so many amazing services that are available, but it's up to the students. So unlike K-12, students have to go and advocate for themselves and go and access the services. So sometimes our students find having us kind of in the picture is helpful because we help navigate and connect them to services that will be the most helpful to them. And we have a great working relationship with all the student services. So even though we're based out of an academic unit, we're still like a student service ourselves, and we interface with all of our different constituents across campus. Our program, it doesn't say that here, is a fee-for-service program, and it is $2,500 per semester. We work with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, so students who are already connected to DVR, if they have financial need, so many students who have financial aid qualify, can get funding for our program through DVR. So we have a lot of students that do that. And I think those are some of the important aspects of OPS. If you could go to the next slide. So again, you can see here, we also like the strengths-based model that Shiva was talking about, focusing on the skills and abilities a student has, and then working at adapting and addressing challenges, but kind of in a compensatory manner. We definitely, the social and interpersonal skill development is important. And we could have a student who is getting straight A's, but if they're stressed in the social arena, that could potentially make it hard to complete college, hard to stay in school. So that's why we take that holistic model and look at all the different pieces. And you can see some of the critical skill development pieces, activities that we do: time management, organization, problem solving, stress management, that's a big one. All of our services always point to, I told you earlier that one of our foundational pieces is employment. And so we're always looking at helping students, even from day one, planning ahead towards career and employment, helping them identify where, what is the best fit for me, what are my strengths and skills, and let's figure out my career path and how to make that happen and how to start planning for that. And some students have never had a job, so let's start getting some employment experience. Then let's work towards internships. Let's work towards reaching out to industry and more job development as we get closer to graduation. So that's OPS. There's a lot more I could say, but I'm just giving you the overview right now. We also have a Thrive program, and I don't know if this is as applicable to the participants of this webinar, but we do a program for 15 to 21-year-olds. We've worked really closely with our school district, our local educational agency, which is the Poudre School District. And we've collaborated a lot with their different transition programs, as well as this one is more focused on students who are in high school and really helping to give them a broader vision and scope of all the different types of career clusters that are available to them. Many students come in, in high school thinking that, oh, I know that I want to work with animals. And so then helping them really explore, well, what does that look like? Let's go and take some real life, live industry tours and find out what it looks like, and let's try it out. So to try to give them experiential opportunities to explore different career clusters and see if that indeed matches what they want to do. And then also opening their eyes to all the other possibilities that exist in the world. And there's so many new and emerging fields even that it's fun to have students come in thinking they know what they want to do, and then they go away thinking, oh, there's 3 other things now I'm also interested in. So it's a real exploratory type program that we just do during the summer, and they have a bit of an internship with that too. And we take kind of a modified path planning approach to helping them develop, like, kind of, here's where you're at now and where do you want to be in the future. And let's start even now. I appreciate what Shiva said about planning for transition, because it does, I agree, start in middle school. But we're kind of capturing these students a little bit later than that. So we definitely need to keep talking about it. And what does it look like? What are your options for continued education, higher education, employment, training, etc. All those different options that Shiva also talked about. And next slide. We also have an empowerment course that we do, and it's a 2-semester class that for students who are 18 to 26 who are out of K-12. Kind of, some of them find themselves in kind of this in-between place. Like, I don't know what the next step is in my life. I'm working on a job. I'm not totally satisfied. I'd like something more. I might be interested in higher education, that sort of thing. And so with the empowerment program, students actually come on campus. They have a 2-semester class with us, and they explore every aspect of, again, more kind of building on the strengths that they bring to the program. How can we kind of like make your trajectory even greater, like what you want to do with your career? What are the steps we need to do to get you from where you're at right now to where you want to be? And so we look at, of course, again, self-advocacy, education. Do you want more education? Is education a piece of this plan? and then employment and career, and always talking about independent living needs as well. Students in this program earn, it's through our continuing education, it says CSU Online. That's our continuing education program at CSU. So they're not online, they're actually in person in this class, at least normally, not right now, but normally. And so they earn continuing education, and there's also a badge system that goes with that, where they earn those for different skills that they develop with the program. Next slide. So again, some of the benefits are students who might be underemployed, how to get them into a niche that might fit them better, and how they can get more skills and potentially education and training to reach the career goals that they have. And again, we really interface with Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. In this process, they also help fund part of this class, and are just an incredible resource for students as they transition out of our program. And I think I've already said everything else on this slide. And the path plan, we already talked about that earlier. That's a way that we help people chart where they're at now, where they want to go. And they also have mentors in this program. So all of our programs use a mentor model, which we find really successful and helpful. I think, is there another slide? Yeah, that's the end. So there's our contact information. And if you go to Contact CCP, you will see all of our programs. And I can send more information if anybody's interested. And then, of course, my contact information too. One little detail I thought of, if we have families or students here at this webinar, that I have found a lot of people don't know about, is in coming to college, if you're going to be living in a residence hall, there is the possibility, if living in a single room provides some of the sensory needs that a student might have, or it's a place where they need a calm, quiet place to kind of decompress every day, so having a roommate is not what they're wanting, that can be an accommodation through your Student Disability Center. And as an accommodation, at least at CSU, you don't pay more for that opportunity. It's just part of an accommodation. So that was just one other little tidbit I thought going forward. And then all the things that Shiva already said about planning ahead and just thinking through the daily living, eating food, taking a shower, getting ready for class, keeping track of medication, all the daily living things that sometimes as parents, and I can attest to this, sometimes we parents do these things for our students, but the more that they can do on their own, the better. And it also helps to let them sometimes fall or fail, and learn that, hey, I'm resilient, I can get up and keep on going and learn from this. So those are my little bits of hopefully helpful information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but again, if you want to put them in there, we're happy to answer questions. I'm going to talk now just a little bit about inclusive higher education. This is going to be a super brief overview, because really the point of this webinar was to kind of show what other options are out there for students with autism, especially if you're already kind of familiar with our organization. I think it's just nice to know that there are different levels and different supports, and all different schools have different things going on. And I think we're also seeing that in the past few years in Colorado, more and more things are starting to happen. So when you're thinking about higher education, I think it's just really important to have that conversation about what support does a student need that's based on just them as a student, and then maybe with their disability, and then look at where is that offered. So this is just a different option that's out there. Inclusive higher education is really designed for students with intellectual disabilities. It is students who traditionally would not have been accepted to college, and sometimes it can be for students who maybe tried going to college for a semester or two and were not successful with their accommodations. So maybe they failed their classes, were trying to retake the classes, and just really, really having a tough time or making really slow progress. So some of those other barriers when we talk about inclusive higher ed are things like if a school requires an SAT or an ACT score, or specific classes a student has taken in high school that maybe students with intellectual disabilities haven't taken, having a traditional high school diploma. A lot of times with inclusive higher ed, we're talking about students who have done their school district transition program or are at least eligible for their district transition program. And the last piece that really differentiates it is students can access modifications. Through other pathways, students can typically only access accommodations in college. At the college level, sometimes I'll hear from high school teachers, this is a little different, but things that would be considered modifications are like a shortened writing assignment. A common one is instead of a 10-page paper, a student maybe writes a 1-page paper, or maybe they even complete a graphic organizer instead of writing out a full essay. Another is alternate test formats. Again, with kind of the written final exams, some students might complete a multiple choice exam instead. Another example is just having a reading at a different level. So it's really just taking whatever's going on in the class, modifying what the professor requires so that it's more accessible to the student. So for some students who maybe are not at the college level academically, this can be a fit. So we see students who maybe have an elementary level of reading and writing, some students at the middle school level, some are at the high school level. It really kind of depends. But in terms of students with autism, if you have a student who may also have an intellectual disability and wouldn't traditionally be accepted, this is just another option. There are 3 schools that our organization works with through a Senate bill that passed a few years ago. There is the University of Northern Colorado has an office called GOAL. Arapahoe Community College at their Littleton office has an office called Elevate. And then at University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, they have the Office of Inclusive Service. And Shiva mentioned earlier, there is a program called the Inclusive Higher Education Certificate Program at Metro State. It has a slightly different model, but I think it's good to know that that also exists. I have one more. Oh, the last one is not related to intellectual disability, more similar to what Julia was talking about, but University of Denver has what's called the Learning Effectiveness Program. So I just share that so you know there are even more that you can look into. When it comes to accessing inclusive services, students just have to be 18 or older. We found a lot of students, if they didn't have the option to go to college, maybe they are older because these pathways are new, and so they came back to college after having graduated from high school. Having an intellectual or developmental disability, again, autism can fall in here depending on the student. And students really just have to have a desire to go to college. They're not asking for any of those other requirements you might see for a school. It's much more a student application talking about, does a student want to come to college? What is their career goal? Does that align with going to college? If they're looking at independent living, there's a student living questionnaire, and then having a letter of recommendation. Just again, kind of getting at, is this student really interested? Because like everyone else has said on this call, it's really about working really hard. And so sometimes we'll see parents might want their student to go to college, but this is really designed for students who really have always wanted to go to college, but maybe it hasn't been possible. In terms of the supports, I think it's a lot of similar supports in terms of peer mentors and those sorts of supports, the vocational supports, so doing things like job shadows and job tours, mock interviews, working on resumes, having on and off campus internships and job experiences. Within each inclusive service office, there's a person that is specific to the career sector, the social sector, the academic sector. The big difference, I think, again, is having those modifications. With the modifications, students earn a comprehensive higher education certificate with a concentration in their area of study. So that is the biggest difference. We always say if a student could take college classes with no modifications, that is definitely the preferred way, because that is going to work towards an associate's degree or maybe a bachelor's degree. This is again for students who maybe wouldn't be pursuing those pathways. I do know there's one student who started on this pathway and is now transferring to CSU and is going to use some of the OPS supports. So I don't know that that is super, super common, but I know that that is an option where sometimes we've seen a student who maybe just needs a lot of that extra support to start with and then says, no, I'm good. I got it. I know what I'm doing. I don't need these modifications. So there are different ways that it can play out. But I think that's just the general overview. I also wanted to point out just some different questions that you can ask. I have a sister with autism, and so she's actually looking at college right now. And I know it's really hard to know what supports are going to be best for her. I think a lot of times as family members, maybe we don't always know like where a student is at. I don't know what modifications she really needs. I know sometimes she chooses not to use some that she has, and then sometimes that goes okay and sometimes it doesn't. So it's kind of hard to know like which of these different levels of support she might need. So there's a guide from Think College, which is an awesome national resource, and they have just different questions like talk to the school about what the admission requirements are. Do you think you would meet those requirements? If not, maybe you need the alternate pathway. Just talking about how do you access financial aid? What are the fees? What is associated? Talking about DVR, I think is a great thing for anyone interested in college with a disability. Looking at inclusion on the college campus. I liked what Shiva was talking about earlier, how they're kind of doing some of that faculty education, because I think we do hear from students who will say, you know, I went to campus and I did not feel good there. I felt like everyone was staring at me. And so just looking around at different campus feels. Same thing with academics, housing, what's offered, what do you prefer? Some students might like a dorm over an apartment style. Some might not like suites. Some might want those independent rooms. So just looking at what are some of these different variables when you're trying to figure out where might this student fit best. You are always welcome to reach out to the schools individually. You can reach out to some of these specific offices. You can talk to disability services. Those are all things that I really strongly encourage before you make your final decision. If you want more info on inclusive higher ed specifically, I have a different webinar in June that is what it's going to focus on. That's why mine is very brief here. And then there's also a webinar I did in February that's recorded. There's my contact info. And then I'll just open it up. We have a few minutes for any questions that you all have. I'm really appreciative to both of our presenters for getting on. I get a phone call probably every week from a parent who has a student with autism, and we kind of just go through like, here are all the options. So I think this will be a really great resource to have out there as well, to just say, here, we have some different ones that are kind of all in one place that folks can look at. But if you're on the call and you're thinking, I could use more info on any of this, feel free, if you want to even unmute yourselves, you're welcome to do that, ask questions. But yeah, thank you so much.
A couple things.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I posted my email address on the chat screen for anyone because I forgot to put it on the slides. And I am, you know, after the recording, you could maybe add it to the slide or something and then share it out. But what I also wanted to add is lots of students come to college not knowing what they want to study. They know they want to go to college and they have like a bunch of ideas, but it's not narrow enough. And sometimes these ideas are also unrealistic. Like I've had students, and I have been there too. Like I took a class in electronics and acoustics thinking, oh, it's going to be fun. And then I just couldn't take that class. It was just horrible. I couldn't understand anything. So there are some classes that students might just not easily learn, and it's always helpful to, in addition to that list that you provided, Shelby, I think it's always helpful to meet with actual department chairs or advisors in specific departments. So say, for example, you're thinking chemistry, you're thinking computer science, you're thinking special education, you're thinking art history, you know, whatever you're thinking, but meeting with actual professors will give you a more realistic idea of what that profession entails. And professors they love to chat with students. They love to chat with families. Universities are frantically trying to enroll students. And so, you know, professors are not going to turn you down. They might not respond immediately. They might respond after a couple of days, but I think it's helpful to reach out to professors to talk about specific majors. That way the students can get an idea of like, hey, does this major really work for me? That's just something I wanted to add. Thank you so much for the opportunity for allowing us to share this. Thanks to you, Shelby, and thanks to Inclusive Higher Ed.
Yeah, thank you. And I echo all those same things, because that's exactly what we see too with students with intellectual disabilities, is just, I'm not really sure what I'm interested in. And I think that's great advice to really talk about like, okay, what is this? And like you said, I took a class in astronomy and that was terrible. It was not what I thought. It was so hard. And I didn't know what I was thinking. I studied education. I had to take a science class. It was bad. And so I think you're right that there's a lot that could be said for just talking to someone about what is it going to entail and look like when you actually get here.
Thank you, Shelby, and everybody for having CSU and for having me today as well. And I do think that talking to people, and even again, the exploring, like going and meet, like if a family knows some friends who are working in a field you think your student might be interested in, having them talk to them or spend time on the job just to see what the real deal is. Those are great ideas.
Cool. All right, I'm going to stop my share and then I will get the slides sent out to those that are on, and then I am going to work on the recording and I should have that by probably Monday. Thank you again so much, everyone. Thanks for those that got on.